Hello, and welcome to this session of Singing with Peggy. In our previous sessions, we've talked about the idea of the vocal instrument and that how the voice parallels the other musical instruments with which you may be familiar. We said every musical instrument needs an activator, and we talked about our activator being, of course, the breath. And we worked a lot on posture breath, which would be to set up a wonderful full instrument, the body houser, and then producing effective breath to activate the sound. Every instrument also needs a vibrator, and we discussed the fact that our larynx and the vocal folds that cross the top of the larynx at the glottis come together and create the vibratory process. Now, our next step might be to think about the resonator. As you look at most musical instruments, it's pretty easy to determine that the body of the instrument itself is the resonator. The body of a violin, for example, the soundboard on a piano, the tube of an oboe or a clarinet. With the voice, our resonator is a little bit different, for one thing, because it's malleable or flexible, and it can move and change shape, which can be a great advantage for us as singers to create a resonating space that is perfect for every pitch that we sing. But we're going to actually get into that in a future video, because in order to create the best resonator, we need to talk a little bit about and play around with the fact that we have articulators that do the shaping, that allow our resonator, which is the vocal tract, to make different shapes. So we're going to talk about today the importance of vowel sounds. When you sing, it's estimated that about 99% of the time we are forming vowel sounds, and consonants come in and interrupt the sound. So a vowel sound is going to be defined as a voiced sound produced by a relatively free passage of the airstream through the larynx and then into the oral cavity, which is our resonator. Also, we could say the vocal tract. And a way to kind of picture this is to see this really great kind of an X-ray diaphragm of the vocal tract. And you'll see that it is the area from the larynx all the way up, and then where the sound comes out of the mouth. We can also consider the nasal passages to be part of the resonator. So we have all of this coming up out of the mouth, out of the nose. That lovely thing right there is your tongue, which is going to play a lot into our discussion today. So the interesting thing is, if you see what look like what I call Dr. Seuss instruments here, that they are two different shapes from the top of the larynx to where the sound comes out of the lips. And this demonstrates that the position of the tongue in particular is going to create a different resonator, a different resonating space. So this larger, more open, which may make sense to you, looking instrument is an all vowel, while this one, a little narrower, is the E vowel. So today we're going to do some vocal exercises where we will explore the different positions of articulators that will affect our resonating space, and also define the words that we are singing. If we are on a vowel sound 99% of the time that we're singing, it's also been determined that the vowel is about 85% responsible for understandability. So we talk about spitting out consonants, but having a proper vowel sound, the vowel sound that we intended, is important to understandability of our words. Now, those articulators that are involved are primarily the tongue, the position of the lips, and then the teeth can have something to do with articulating of consonants, as well as the gum ridge. The soft palate is involved in vowels and consonants, as we will find out. The hard palate, the roof of the mouth, and then another important articulator is the jaw. And then the glottis itself can articulate consonants. For vowels, the principal definition will be determined by the position of the tongue. So the tongue can either be in a high position, or a mid position, or a low position. You can see that I have that little concave position. Then the horizontal tongue position, is it more in the front? Is that height also front? Is it central or is it back? So we'll work a little bit with tongue position and to see how that's going to affect the vowel sound. This chart is just, to me, really fascinating. This is called the vowel quadrilateral or quadrangle. And it is a diagram of primarily the position of the lips, the tongue, and the jaw as far as what will define a vowel. And we said that the tongue is the primary determinant. So if you start up here and you say with me the vowel sound, and these are international phonetic symbols, but it's pretty easy to understand and you don't even need to be able to read them. But what I'm going to do is go from the top to the bottom. And this will mean that my tongue is in the highest position here and in the lowest position here. And you notice the word close and the word open. And you might feel as if your mouth has more space in it as we move down. So the vowel sounds are E, I, E. Sorry, let me try that again. E, I, E, A, Ah. Now, if you just wanted to put your tongue very high, and I'm going to move the chart away so that you can watch me do it. E, E, and I'm just going to move the back of my tongue down and see if you hear me move through that same variety of vowels. Yeah, and you saw that my tongue, by the time I got to the end, was low in my mouth. The same thing will happen with the vowels on the other side. And the tongue is going to be changing a little bit more in the front, so that we call these back vowels. They're back vowels because the space is in the back. In the front vowels, the space, the opening, you could see tended to move more in the front. So these vowels on this side are also rounder. So in order to make them sound right, I'm going to also have to round my lips a little bit. But as I go down this, ooh, you'll feel that your tongue does move and that your lips are going to be from very round to more unrounded. So let me go through that with you watching my lips change. Ooh. And my tongue also moved. An interesting thing that I didn't intend, but you also see that there was a little bit of a tendency for the pitch to change and go a little bit lower as the vowel sounds got more open and more and less rounded, or my tongue position changed. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the idea in our next video that vowels have pitch. But for today, see if you can do this with me. Repeat after me. E, I, E, ah. Okay, now we're going to go through that all on one breath, not necessarily trying to have a particular pitch, and see if you can feel your tongue. And if you want to just take your tongue in a high position and gradually move it down low, you'll get the same effect. So here it is. Notice your tongue lowering. Let's go through the other side of that quadrilateral, where we have from an oo, unrounding the lips, and the tongue is also moving in the back, becoming less occluded inside the mouth as we go oo, o, aw, ah. And that ah is a little rounder than the ah that we had on the other side of the chart. One last thing I'm going to show you is how the tongue position changes, and those are these lines, and then it actually graphs onto there where those various vowel positions are and where your tongue is. And you notice something really crazy is it forms that quadrangle. I think that's fascinating. But for today, we're going to work a little bit with some singing exercises. So first of all, let's limit the number of vowels. What I just went through are the principal vowels in the English language. A problem with English is we also do something that's called a diphthong or triphthong. That is, our vowels aren't pure. It's unusual in English to have a vowel that doesn't migrate a little bit, that changes its position. For example, in the word night, you don't just sing not, you might if you're Southern, but night. And notice how my tongue moved away from the low position of the ah into a little bit of an it position. And so we don't have the purity that we want while we're working on our vowel sounds. In order to have more pure vowels, we go to the cardinal vowels, and those are basically the Latin vowels. The Latin language, as we sing it in the ecclesiastical Latin, has 5 sounds, and those are ah, e, aw, and oo. Notice that I went through all of those positions from the extremes. An extreme high, a nice central middle, and then an extreme low. And then on the other side, I did rounded a little bit and then rounded a lot. So those are nice basic vowel sounds that we can do some singing on. Last time, we talked a little bit about moving through one of our nice buzzy hummy sounds to make a more efficient vibration that would move into the vowels from the very easy thing of being hummy. So let's do an exercise where we're going to sing the 5 cardinal vowels, but preceded by an M. And this is a pretty common voice exercise. So what we're going to do is go in this order. It's going to be oo, o, ah, e. And I've put that both in kind of an English phonetic and our phonetic symbols, which are really pretty easy to understand. The oo, o, kind of an open O, ah with a little roundness, a nice open sound, and e. So we're going to go in this order, and we're going to sing it on one pitch, but we're going to put an M in front of each one. I'll do it one time, and then you can join with me, and we'll move it by half steps. Let's remove the M and be very aware, just an awareness exercise of how your lips change and how your tongue position changes. You'll be very aware of the unrounding of the lips from ooh, and the height of the tongue changing from I. Okay, so here it is. Same exercise, removing the M's. Now, let's do those 5 vowels in the opposite order. So then you can feel going from the high E, A, O. So it's going to be E, E, A, O, U. All right, same thing. E, A, O, E, A, O, E, A, O, E, A, O. Good. One thing you might be asking, that you might have a tendency to sing E, and notice that I'm not really thinking all that much about the position of my jaw, how open or closed am I. I'm trying to keep a nice relaxed jaw. The E will tend to want to close you a little bit, but the idea is that we're going to have a nice space inside. Another thing that you could play around with is moving from an ah to an E directly and not have a lot of change in your jaw position. So let's try doing a slide where we'll go ah, ah, and try primarily just moving your tongue. In fact, you might go ah, ah. Notice there's a little bit of a closing, but I'm focusing on keeping that basic ah space all the time. So let's do that by half steps. Ah, 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 wonderful. And something that we are working on is keeping the same sense of resonance, of ring, of quality, also timbre, you might call it, from one vowel to the next, and that can take some work. You can also go the other direction and go from E to ah. I sometimes call a little exercise tongue push-ups, because if you have your tongue in the highest position and then go to the lowest position, in other words, you're going from E, ah, E, ah, E, ah, E, ah, and you go quickly through the E, you glide it. A glided E vowel gives us what we think of as the Y, the Y. So let's try going. Ya, ya, ya. notice the height of the tongue, and then it's coming down. So a nice open ya, 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 ya. Ya, 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 ya. Ya, 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 ya. Good. And that also demonstrates how the difference between an E and the A is not E-ah, but it is actually the movement of the tongue. Ya, ya. And by doing that exercise, you can work on getting rid of some of the tongue tensions that oftentimes can interfere with our vocal quality. Next, we're going to do a couple of exercises going between other front and back vowels. Get my paper turned here. Last time we did an exercise where we went me, 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 to work on again the vibratory sound that we get with the hum moving into a vowel sound. Now we're going to go back and forth between what we call the front vowels, the E, the A, where our tongue position is higher, and our round vowels or back vowels. And sometimes people call this bright and dark. And eventually we'll talk about in our resonance exercises something called chiaroscuro, which is a balance between light sounds and dark sounds, bright and dark, which you might see in Italian painting, and that's where the word comes from. So here we're going to go back and forth between an E and an O, and it's going to be E-O, 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 E-O. And I'm working for an equality of sound between the quality, the resonance I get in the E, and that in the O. So let's do a few of those, and then we'll switch to a couple of other sounds that you can work on. Ready? And E-O, 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 E-O. Let's try it with A-aw, A-aw. And one more. Wonderful. As I'm doing this video, I'm watching myself and I am seeing that wonderful tongue movement, and I hope that you have that going for you too. We can also use some 5-note scales where we'll move up on a closed vowel or a front vowel and move down on a back or round vowel. So this is going to be E-O. You can join in. E-O. Same quality up and down, same resonance. Pattern that you can use moving from front to back or back to front, and I'll start with E, O, and then we'll do some O, E. It's this arpeggio pattern. E, O, E, O, E. E, O, E, O, E. E, O, E, O, E. Now the reverse. O, E, O. going to do one last exercise. This one we'll use those 5 cardinal vowels, but also introduce a slurred note. So you move from one pitch to another pitch on the same vowel, but you want to keep that same quality, and just a sense of, what might be going on inside of your vocal tract, inside of your mouth. And next time we'll talk about some ways that if you're running into some issues that you feel like you need to make some modifications. And yes, there is a terminology of vowel modification that we'll be talking about to get the optimal resonance for each pitch. But this exercise is really popular. I like it a lot. And the pattern is, and we will have 2 pitches for each vowel. And we're going to start with our E, and we'll go through again. E, E, A, O, U. The tongue position getting lower, and then we're going to go rounder. And it goes like this. E, E, O, poor little U only gets 1 pitch. Now, another thing to watch for is that you're smoothly moving from pitch to pitch. You don't need to restart the sound. You don't need to add an H in aspiration. Try to make this very smooth, and just be aware of if there's a sense that you need or want to do any extra movement. Maybe you'll find something in the jaw that might want to happen as you're moving through the 2 pitches. Let's do several of these, and this will be the last thing on today's video. Differences in the sounds and making the pure cardinal vowels, the Latin vowels. E, E, have a good time playing around with these vowel sounds, experimenting, exploring the movements of primarily the tongue and the lips, as they will define the vowel sounds as to whether they are understandable. A lot of times in our lives we don't pay much attention. We learned to talk by rote, didn't we? If you're learning a foreign language, you might actually do better if you understand how the different sounds in the language are actually formed inside the mouth. But we're going back and looking at our own language by using 5 vowels that we have that are also in the Latin and used a lot in bel canto, which is that wonderful old method of teaching singing. Simply means beautiful singing, which is ultimately what our goal is. So, wonderful vowel sounds will contribute the best towards beautiful singing. As you're working on these, I didn't talk much today about your posture and your breath, but be sure that you are sitting or standing in a way that is promoting free vibration of the vocal folds and a good supportive amount of breath energy. See you next time.